Stephen A. Smith didn't just walk into the WNBA debate. He walked straight into the middle of one of the league's most explosive arguments. And this time, the name attached to the controversy was Sophie Cunningham. What started as one player's opinion about women's sports quickly turned into a much bigger fight, involving coaches, league policy, Caitlin Clark, Brittany Griner, fans, and a flood of claims spreading across social media. But here's where the story gets complicated. Some of the loudest allegations surrounding Griner aren't supported by evidence at all. And once you separate the real controversy from the internet rumors, what's left is actually more interesting. Because this isn't simply about one player attacking another. It's about what happens when a professional sports league becomes the stage for a national argument that nobody seems capable of keeping off the court. Cunningham knew exactly what kind of reaction she was going to get when she spoke about transgender athletes in women's sports. She wasn't making some harmless comment about basketball strategy. She was stepping into one of the most divisive subjects in American sports. And she didn't hide from it. Cunningham said she wanted to protect young girls in sports and argued that biological sex should matter when determining who competes in women's competition. She also pushed back against the idea that holding that position automatically meant she hated transgender people. Her message was essentially that she could respect people while still believing there should be boundaries in women's sports. That distinction became the center of her defense. And the reaction was immediate. Some fans praised her for saying something they believed other athletes were afraid to say. Others accused her of targeting transgender people and argued that her position contributed to an already hostile environment. Cunningham responded by saying she expected both support and criticism, and that she wasn't going to change her position simply because people online disagreed with her. That was the moment the story stopped being just another WNBA interview. Cunningham had turned herself into a participant in a national debate, whether she wanted that role or not. Then Stephen A. Smith entered the conversation, and that's when the volume went through the roof. Smith has never been known for quietly discussing controversial sports topics. His entire media persona is built around strong opinions, dramatic arguments, and saying things other commentators might soften. This time, he sided with Cunningham's broader position and went after Minnesota Lynx coach Cheryl Reeve for publicly signaling support for transgender inclusion during a nationally televised game. Smith's argument wasn't simply about one shirt or one moment. He believed a coach of a women's basketball team should be thinking about the competitive interests of the women playing in that league. Caitlin Clark into a conversation that was already getting heated. But here's where this story gets much more complicated than the viral clips make it seem. Because while Cunningham's comments and Smith's response are real, some of the wildest claims circulating about Brittany Griner are not supported by credible evidence. And once you separate the facts from the internet rumors, a much bigger story starts to appear. Sophie Cunningham knew she was going to get backlash when she spoke about women's sports. Her argument was straightforward. She said she wanted to protect young girls and women competing in sports and argued that biological sex should matter when determining who competes in women's competition. She also pushed back against people accusing her of hating transgender people, making it clear that she believed there was room for everyone while still maintaining her position about women's sports. That distinction became the center of the controversy. Cunningham wasn't saying she wanted transgender people excluded from society. She was arguing about competitive categories. And whether you agree with her or not, that is the actual argument she put forward. But social media doesn't exactly reward nuance. Within hours, her comments were being turned into clips, arguments, memes, and political talking points. Some fans praised her for saying something they believed other athletes were afraid to say. Others accused her of targeting transgender people and contributing to an already hostile environment. Cunningham didn't back away. She essentially said that she expected both love and criticism, and that she wasn't going to change her beliefs simply because people were angry about them. And that's when Stephen A. Smith entered the picture. Smith didn't treat Cunningham's comments like some minor player controversy. He went straight at the larger issue. He criticized Minnesota Lynx coach Cheryl Reeve for publicly signaling support for transgender inclusion and argued that a coach of a women's basketball team should be thinking first about the competitive interests of the women in that league. Smith's argument was blunt. In his view, supporting women's sports means protecting the competitive category created specifically for women. And he wasn't finished. Smith also suggested that there could be players inside the WNBA who privately agree with Cunningham but don't feel comfortable saying so publicly. That's a claim that can't simply be presented as fact without those players saying it themselves. But as a media argument, it added another layer to the controversy. Suddenly, this wasn't just Sophie Cunningham versus her critics. It became a debate about whether athletes feel free to speak openly about one of the most politically charged issues in sports. And that's where the WNBA found itself in a difficult position. The league has players with very different opinions. It has coaches with different